Greetings, it's Ian from RTO here. If you think the camera's moved, you're absolutely right, because yours truly went and knocked it as he got out of the chair after doing the birthday top 10. Well, there you go. Anyway, this is a different sort of album ranking. Now, as we know, it's the 4th of July on Thursday, and I thought, let's do something themed around the 4th of July. And I thought, I know, why don't I pick my favourite albums that were number 1 on the 4th of July in America. So I've done a top 10. So you're sort of getting to 3 top 10s today. So these are all the albums I've picked out that were at number 1 on the US Billboard 200 on the 4th of July. So coming in at number 10, we go to the 4th of July 1985. And at number 1 on that day was Phil Collins, his 3rd studio album, No Jacket Required. This had been released in February and it was at number 1 on the 4th of July. So Phil Collins plays on here, of course. He does vocals and keyboards and drums. Daryl Sturmer on guitars and keyboards. David Frank on the keyboards. Nicky Glennie Smith on keyboards. Lee Sakar on the bass guitar, the legendary. The Phoenix Horns and Gary Barnacle on the saxophone, along with Don Merrick. Sting does some backing vocals, and Peter Gabriel does some backing vocals, along with Helen Terry. So this has got, of course, a studio on, that very 80s sort of haunty sort of track. And my favourite song on here is Only You Know and I Know. Just love the drums at the beginning. Long Way to Go. Classic, used to close Phil's solo shows. I Don't Want to Know comes next. I think this is at least one that probably could have appeared on the Genesis at the time. I've got a big issue about some of the tracks, but this I don't know, this could have appeared on there. One More Night. Well, I must be the only person that doesn't like this. Never have liked it. Don't Lose My Number. That typical drum machine from the 80s. Who Said I Would? Another good track off this album. Doesn't Anyone Stay Together Anymore? Phil's drumming on that has always been great. Inside Out. It is a bit of a Genesis track that he's redone. Might be for the Genesis version. Take Me Home, another of them tracks. Another that was towards the end of a show. Yeah, it's a solid album. It's not particularly my favourite one, but it's pretty good. Okay, at number 9, we go to the year 2013. And it is Black Sabbath and 13. It's their 19th and final studio album. And it was their first studio album that Ozzy had done since Never Say Die. And it was the first one Geezer Butler had been on since Cross Purposes. So it's Ozzy, Tony and Geezer with Brad Wilk on drums. The first track is at End of the Beginning. Classic riffs from Tony. Great bass. Even Ozzy sounds good on that track. God Is Dead. Solid track. Nothing wrong with that one. Loner. It's not too bad. Zeitgeist. It's a weird track. Reminds me of Planet of Caravan. Don't like that either. Age of Reason. It's alright. It goes on a little bit too long though. Live Forever. Great tune. Tony Iommi again was really giving it the business with them riffs. Damaged Soul. Another track that goes on and on and on. Dear Father. Again too long. Mathmademic. I love Geezer's bass line on this. And it's a great vocal from Ozzy on that. Peace of Mind is a very short, sort of stabby track. Proper Black Sabbath, brilliant track. And Pariah, not too bad. As I said, I think when I ranked them, this Black Sabbath albums, I think some of the tracks are a little bit long, but it was great to see them playing together for one more time, and it's not a bad album. Okay, number 8. Now we're going to 1988. And the album that was number 1 on the 4th of July was OU812 from Van Halen. Sammy Hagar was lead vocal and rhythm guitars. Eddie Van Halen was lead guitars. Michael Anthony on the bass and Alex Van Halen. This album opened up with my favourite track on here, and it's probably one of my favourite tracks of the Van Hagar era, Mine All Mine. Love that sort of keyboard start, was great. The solo from Eddie was absolutely brilliant. A really strong track. When It's Love, commercial, did well in the American charts. It's alright. Then we get a great track called AFU, Naturally Wired. Alex is drumming on this. It's absolutely top drawer. Another lovely little licks and riffs from Eddie. Carbo Warbo reminds me of a lot of Sammy's solo stuff. I do like that. And as you know, I'm a huge fan of Sammy Hagar. And I think this is some of Sammy's best vocals on this album. Source of Infection, fast, furious. Great drumming from Alex. Feels So Good. I love Eddie's keyboard playing on it. It is infectious. And I love that sound. Back and Blue. Great bass line from Michael. Amazing guitar from Eddie again. Then we get Sucker in a 3-piece. Typical rocker from Van Halen. Michael's bass is just brilliant. What a bass player he was for this band. The backing vocals as well. And it's a great track to end the album. The best album, I think, from the Van Hagar era. I saw them, was it on this tour or the next tour? I can't remember. But absolutely brilliant album. I do like that one. Okay, number 7. We're going to go back to 1971 now. And it's a album by the wonderful Carole King, and of course it is Tapestry. This came out in the February and it was at number 1 on the 4th of July. This album's just got classic songs on, hasn't it? I Feel the Earth Move. The piano at the beginning of that is wonderful. So Far Away, one of Carole's classics. It's Too Late. Lyrics by Tony Stern. A lot of people have covered this, Gloria Estefan being one of them, but to me, it is Carole's Home Again, one of my favourite songs from Carole King. I love putting this on. You play it loud, and it feels like she's actually sitting in the same room as you. Beautiful, good track. It was a pop version by Streisand and Mitra Marx. This is the best. Way Over Yonder, another absolutely top draw track from Carole. Jazzy sort of smoky room sort of thing. Then we've got You've Got a Friend. Now this was a big hit for James Taylor. I like James Taylor's version, but to me Carole's will always reign supreme. When You're Where You Lead, another Tony Stern lyrics, another great track. Then we have a track written by her ex-husband Jerry Goffin. This was a Will You Love Me Tomorrow. Now they wrote this for the Shirelles, but I think Carole always does a great version of that. Then they do Smack Walk to Jack, another Goffin King track. Bit of a blues one that is. Then the wonderful Tapestry. I love the piano on this. And then there's You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman, a song written for Aretha Franklin, of course, but it is written by Carole King and Jerry Goffin. My number 1 album by Carole King. It's just an absolutely belter of an album, and I love it to bits. Okay, number 6. We have to go to 1975 now, and the 8th album of Elton John, Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. What an album. Opens up with the title track, cowboy song, sort of thing get. Love this. Great little track. Tower of Babel, my favourite track on the album. The guitar work is fantastic. There's lots of atmosphere on this. Bitter Fingers, Elton's wonderful piano at the beginning of this. It's just absolutely out the top drawer. Tell Me When the Whistle Blows. The killer guitar solo on that. Someone Saved My Life to Dumb. Single off this album, pretty good. Didn't make the top 10, but it's still a very good song. Gotta Get a Meal Ticket. Another of them great little rockers hidden on this album from Elton. Better Off Dead. I love Elton's playing on this. Absolutely brilliant. Writing, a nice gentle song. Nice acoustic guitars on that one. We All Fall in Love Sometimes. One of my favourite ballads by Elton. Of all these ballads, it's just brilliant. It's the piano and then that great guitar solo. And then the album ends with Curtains. One of the best closing tracks on an Elton John, I think. Great album. This is the period where every album, it just turned to gold for him. Probably why it's my favourite decade, the 70s of Elton John. Brilliant album. Okay, for number 5, we're going to go to 1972. The 10th album, British album, but the 12th American album for the Rolling Stones, Exile on Main Street. It was only released on May the 12th, and by the 4th of July 72, it was at number 1. So the band at the time was Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Mick Taylor, Bill Wyman and Charlie Watts. Opens up with The Great Rocks Off. That great bass from Bill. Brilliant. Rip this joint. Great rocker. Brilliant vocals from Mick. Shake Your Hips. Has got a bit of Legrand ZZ Top to it. It's a Slim Harpo song. They do a great version of it. Because Casino Boogie's got that real great sax piece in it. Really strong track, that one is. The brilliant Tumbling Dice. Can't say much about that, can you? It's just a great track. Sweet Virginia. One of them nonsense sort of fun tracks. You can imagine them sitting around playing that. Yeah, great track. Torn and Frayed, great track. Love the piano work on that. Sweet Black Angel, acoustic style track. Loving Cup, another classic, got brass in it. Side 3 we're on now. Happy, bluesy number, some great guitar work here from Mick and Keith. Then my favourite track on here, Turd on the Run. One of the best bluesy tracks, some harmonica, I just love that. The brilliant Ventilator Blues as well. Unique sound, they love their blues. I Just Want to See His Face. It's sort of a Led Zeppelin-y thing as well. I think I like that. Let It Loose. A great little gentle track with a bit of bluesy rock. All Down the Line. A nice, after all the we got a real rocker to start off side 4. Stop Breaking Down, which is a Robert Johnson number. I think he made it, recorded this round about 1937. Shine a Light, one of my favourite tracks. Soul Survivor, very good song. I love this album. As simple as ours. There's not. It's not a bad track really on it. It's one of them double albums that hasn't got no filler again. Okay, number 4. We go to 1976, and this was the second time that it was at number 1 in that year in America. It was number 1 in April, and it got back to number 1 in July, and it's Wings at the Speed of Sound. Paul McCartney's on here, Linda, Denny, Jimmy McCulloch, Joe English, Tony Dorsey on the trombone, Thaddeus Richard on saxophone, Steve Howard trumpet, Howard Casey saxophone, and George Chidwell on the trumpet. Opens up with the Let 'Em In, which coincidentally is my door. If you ever ring my doorbell, you get ding dong, ding dong. 1 or 2 people have gone, someone's knocking at the door. I love that track. One of my favourite tracks by Wings. The Note That You Never Wrote. Love this. That bluesy sort of sound. She's My Baby, one of them little quirky Paul McCartney tracks. Beware My Love. I like the sort of music in this, the church or the sitting in a church sort of thing. Pretty decent track. Wino Junko. Love the funky bass line on this. Brilliant track. Then we get Silly Love Songs, a classic. One of the best bass lines on the album. Cook of the House, a little Linda McCartney thing. I think she was a better backing vocalist than a lead vocalist. Time to Hide. You got Denny singing this. Brilliant. Lovely song. Then we have Must Something I Do. It's a Joe English song. Very Eagles in place. Good vocals. San Ferrian. Quirky little track again. Warm and Beautiful. Reminds me a bit of Eleanor Rigby in places. And that was the last track. Apart from that London McCartney song, I think this is a solid album from top to bottom. Okay, number 3. We go to the year of 1982. And a supergroup, an English supergroup called Asia, of course, and their 1982 self-titled debut. Again, it was one of these albums that was at number 1 twice in the album charts. It was a couple of weeks in May, dropped down, and then come back. And it was the number 1 selling album in the United States in 1982. Band, of course, John Wetton, Jeff Downes, Steve Howell and Carl Palmer. Heat of the Moment opens it. One of the greatest songs I ever wrote. John Wetton's vocal is brilliant. Only Time Will Tell, that lovely opening from Jeffrey Downes and Steve on the guitars. Soul Survivor, another great track. One Step Closer, very catchy tune. Time and Again, love John Wetton's bass on this. Wildest Dreams. Another great track. Without You, one of the nice ballads from John. Cutting It 5. Not one of my favourite songs on the album, but I do like Steve Howell's guitar work on. Here Comes the Feeling. This album is brilliant. The album that I brought because of the cover, and it still remains a well-played album in my collection. Okay, at number 2, we have the winner of Battle Royale. Yes, it's from 1967, Sgt. Pepper's, released on the 26th of May 1967, and it spent 14 weeks at number 1 in 1967, including July the 4th. We've been talking about this album for a long time, so it's got Sgt. Pepper's Only Lonely Hearts. With a little help from our friends, Lucy and the Sky Diamonds, Getting Better, Fixing the Hole. I love the harpsichord on that. She's Leaving Home, Benefit for Mr. Kite, great track. Then we get a track that I just detest, Within Without You, load of old tripe. When I'm 64, the lovely Rita, Good Morning, Good Morning. The reprise of Sgt. Pepper's, and then the masterpiece that is A Day in the Life. Just one of the greatest tracks the Beatles ever did, in my books. So, my number 1. This album, this is probably one of the most perfect albums. It came out in 76, but it was at number 1 in 1977, and this had 3 runs at number 1. The first time was from April the 2nd to the 19th. Dropped down, and then from May the 21st to the 16th of July, it was number 1. 1 week, Barry Manilow had an album at number 1 for 1 week, and then it was back at number 1, and it was at number 1 then till the 3rd of December. And we're talking about Fleetwood Mac's Rumours. Lindsay Buckingham, Stevie Nicks, Christine McVie, John McVie and Mick Fleetwood. This is the best lineup ever of Fleetwood Mac in my books. Secondhand News, just a brilliant track. I love that guitar work from Lindsay. It's a great opening track. The Wonderful Dreams, the lovely guitar, the bits and the bass line from bass, great vocal from Stevie. Never Going Back Again, I adore the guitar on this. Lindsay vocals are brilliant. Then we get the late and great Christine McVie's Don't Stop, classic, wonderful track. Go Your Own Way, it's probably the most played track on this album. It gets overplayed and it's one of them tracks, I like it, but if I never hear it again I won't. Doesn't bother me. Songbird, fantastic performance of Christine McVie on that. Then we get The Chain. Formula One, it's all there, isn't it? Great track. Then we have You Make Loving Fun, the tongue-in-cheek about Christine writing about a new boyfriend while she was splitting up with John. I Don't Want to Know. One of these tracks that sort of gets left behind, I think. It's a great vocals between Stevie and Lindsay. Then we get Oh Daddy, one of Christine's finest moments in Fleetwood Mac, and brilliant track. And then the Gold Dust Woman is just terrific. One of the best songs Stevie Nicks ever did with Fleetwood Mac. This has always been the perfect album. With everyone splitting up and affairs and all sorts going on, it's amazing how they put this album out. That's why I've put this at number 1. So there we go. That's something a little bit different. Just these were the albums that were flying high on the album charts on the 4th of July. Okay, coming up next is Retro Ranking. Again, it's an American theme thing. And we're going to look at, you remember a few weeks ago we did some British sitcom themes. We're going to look at some Americans this week and the stories about behind some of them. Some of them you'll remember and some of them you go, God, I remember that. So it's a little bit of a trip down memory lane on some great American sitcoms. Not many of them were good in my books. I can't get the American humour sometimes, but these 10 I did, and I did like the tunes as well. So that's coming up next. Bye for now.